Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to present how to run your biotech R&D virtually, and we're glad to be here with you, safe and healthy during this time. We recognize it's a challenging time for most scientists and most biotech companies. Safety protocols have disrupted a lot of research processes, and researchers are working from home in different shifts. So that's why we wanted to host this event and share with you how we can make your work easier during this time. Our speakers today are from Seismic, Labguru, and Papers, which are part of the digital science family. And as digital science companies, all of us are focused on making research more efficient and accessible. So these three companies have come together to provide a suite of virtual tools to help you run your company from home, which has become the predominant way of working during the age of COVID. So I'm sure some of you have run into a variety of challenges in most of your work processes. These are some of the main challenges of operating virtually that we've been hearing from our customers and companies that we work with. First, hiring the right person is even more important in the time of COVID, when communication, productivity, and overseeing teams is more of a challenge. As a manager, you won't have as much oversight with your direct reports, and you need to trust that they can work independently and still be productive without you. Second, feeling connected and productive with your team, especially as you bring in new staff, can be very hard when you're all working different shifts and you're not next to each other during the workday. Third, lab tools have been designed to work in the lab. So accessing data and the team members' work is critical for efficient and flexible workflows. And right now, when you're not next to each other, communication and research workflows can break down very easily. And then fourth, hitting milestones is very critical, but again, challenging when your team is not next to you to communicate their research and the research in the field in real time. Companies of all shapes and sizes are feeling the impact, and these companies here are prioritizing adapting their workflows and enhancing productivity using our products. So these are just some of the companies that are using us right now. So what do these three companies do? We've come together to help you run your biotech R&D virtually. We support and enable the work done in biotech and pharma. We tackle three different parts of running a company. So hiring, data collection, and sharing your data across the team, and literature management. Here's how we help. You can use Seismic to define your hiring needs, find scientists from diverse backgrounds, and grow your team efficiently and inclusively. And once you hire, you'll need to onboard your new team member into your R&D processes. So enable them to share their data with the rest of the team, and your current team to share data with each other. So you use Labguru to set up your team on your R&D data collection, your inventory, and your lab management structure. And then to get your team and your new hires up to date in your field, you use Papers to discover, access, and collaboratively work with scholarly literature across your team. Our goal is really to move you from chaos to simplicity. Use our virtual tools to straighten out your processes, advance your milestones, or advance your project and hit your milestones. You probably want to move away from time-consuming manual processes. You want to reduce human errors. You want to conserve money and resources for high-impact activities. And ultimately, you want to drive innovations forward. Our tools help you do that. So I just wanted to introduce our speakers really quickly. I'm Elizabeth Wu from Seismic, and I'm joined here today by Jonathan Gross of Labguru and Alex Hodgson of Papers. So we're going to start with how you can find and hire the right people with Seismic. If you have any questions during the talk for any of our speakers, please put them in the Ask a Question box. You can find them at the bottom bar of your screen. And we will be going through the questions at the end to address them during the Q&A session. So right now, COVID-19 is making finding the right scientists very challenging. It's challenging during normal times, and it's become even more challenging when everyone's working from home. From speaking with our biotechs, these are some of the main concerns that our customers have during this time. It's really hard to communicate with your hiring team on the job criteria and candidate status. Companies are now in a position where they have to evaluate candidates without meeting them in person. And this means that your screening methods are even more critical. Also, you may not be able to accurately predict how your hiring timelines and your hiring plans may change due to COVID-19. We've noticed that with a lot of our companies, hiring timelines have been pushed out, and they're not quite sure when they'll be able to hire again or who they'll need at a specific time anymore. And to go along with it, your projections are less certain. So your leaders are more conservative, companies in general are more conservative about resources and trying to save time and money. So how do we help this situation? Before I dive into it, I just want to give you a background on what we do so you have some context of how we can also help in these circumstances. So Seismic is a talent matching platform for the sciences. We provide you with a technology to automate your candidate screening process. So you as a company would only target relevant candidates for your job. Our skills matching technology is 5 times more accurate than traditional methods, which saves you a lot of screening time and helps you find scientists within 2 to 4 weeks. So in a nutshell, as a company on Seismic, you would create a job profile in a very specific way on Seismic. And meanwhile, candidates are creating candidate profiles on Seismic. Our system creates an automated match so that only candidates that meet your minimum requirements would be able to see the job. So once they see the job, if they're interested in it, they can then apply through Seismic. And you as the company would only receive pre-screened applications from interested candidates. So this saves you, the 35 hours of screening time that you might spend on CV screening, and it also saves you your time to fill. So now I'm going to share how we can help specifically with the challenges I mentioned during COVID-19. So many of our biotechs are trying to set up effective communication processes for their hiring team to align their expectations of what the ideal candidate looks like. So this was a challenge even before COVID and has just been made worse because of it. We constantly hear from talent acquisition professionals and hiring managers that the expectations for the candidate are not aligned, and the skills that are being targeted by one person on the hiring team don't align with what's being targeted by another person on the hiring team. So Seismic actually provides you the tools so that you can align the job criteria. So you get the talent acquisition teams and the hiring managers on the same page. You collaborate on jobs for clarity and accurate candidate targeting. So you can actually divide which team member is completing each section and collaborate on the job that way. This has been particularly helpful for hiring teams to have, hiring managers complete, the expertise section, which has a very specialized scientific skills taxonomy, so that the right skills are being targeted, and you can have a talent acquisition professional complete other parts of the job. So on Seismic, you can build comprehensive job profiles that are controlled, shareable, and editable across the hiring team to ensure that priorities and qualifications of the candidate meet your needs. And then we also provide tracking tools so that you can share the status of candidate evaluation for each applicant. The second challenge I shared was that you need to select candidates without meeting them in person. So your screening methods need to be very solid. Seismic allows you to gain extra layers in assessing candidate qualities, or candidate qualifications and abilities. And now that you're working from home, managers, as I mentioned before, need their employees to be able to work independently with little oversight and hand-holding. And we've heard this over and over from hiring managers that are hiring right now, is that they need to see that the candidates are able to drive forward a lot of projects themselves. So we provide our skills matching system already understands how research skills and research fields are related to each other and weights your criteria to deliver on target candidates. So that's one extra layer of screening we provide. We also provide an enhanced written evaluation. You can add application questions to your application on Seismic to gain insight into candidates' ability and communication style. And we've had hiring managers tell us that this has greatly helped their selection process. They can understand the candidate's level of enthusiasm, how the job really fits them, and how they can contribute and grow in the role. We also provide educational programming. So we have events and resources to help companies set up effective and inclusive hiring practices. This goes anywhere from setting up your candidate sourcing strategies to how to run your interviews effectively, and also to how to create inclusive hiring practices so that you're not excluding specific candidate populations. So the third challenge I shared was that companies are having a hard time predicting their hiring timelines and needs. Some hiring contracts out there right now lock you in for specific predefined jobs and hiring volumes that may later be overhauled, especially right now. So you really need to use tools that allow for flexibility as your needs and hiring plans rapidly change. So Seismic provides multiple hiring programs depending on your needs. So you can be flexible in your timelines and make sure that you're not wasting money on some predefined position that you no longer need to hire for. And then lastly, as we all know, companies are very conservative about their resources and time and finances right now. They're not certain about their projections. So they're trying to find ways to save time and money, as always, but even more so now. So right now, I'm sure you've all been experiencing back-to-back meetings. There's an even greater need to focus your time on high-impact activities that will drive your company toward milestones. So there's somehow even more things to juggle in a virtual world. And Seismic takes a lot of that frustrations and heavy lifting of hiring and screening thousands of candidates off your team so that you have more resources that you can put into R&D. And then with our extra screening, with our extra layers of screening, you can make solid hires. As we all know, a bad hire is a drain on your finances and energy. It can cost you up to 30% of the candidate's salary or more. And also you lose the time. You lose the time that you could have brought in a good hire. So here's what our biotechs are experiencing with Seismic. You can source 5 times more accurately and hire 3 times faster with Seismic, meaning 50% of the applicants are called back compared to 10% that are called back through general job boards. This is what some of our companies have been saying about us, that Seismic only gives candidates with relevant skills, that the applicants were a good fit, and that when they hired through Seismic, they were confident that they found the right people for the job. I also want to share our scientist community, which is highly diverse in education level, in experience level, and demographics. We do use broad-reaching candidate acquisition strategies to make sure our system is inclusive. We actually have an event tomorrow, session 6, where we'll share a step-by-step guide on creating an inclusive hiring practice at your biotech. And we can share some of the strategies we've been using to create a very diverse scientific community. So in the end, we actually are 2 times more effective in bringing in underrepresented hires for companies. And this is something we're very proud of, and that we're continuing to move forward through NIH-funded efforts. So now I'm going to turn it over to Labguru so you can learn how to get your team members onto your research workflow and seamlessly incorporate their data. So, Jonathan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Just sharing my screen. All right. So thank you all for attending first. My name is Jonathan Gross. I'm actually talking to you from my home office, based in Israel. We're actually back to lockdown, so this is very relevant for all of us. In the past 10 years, I've been working with researchers, companies that are small, large, pharmaceutical, biotech, academia, labs in academia, helping them transition from paper and then adopting Labguru, basically improving their performance. I'm not, in this short session, I'm not going to be able to go over all of Labguru and what it can do for you, but I'm going to touch about how researchers or companies that are working with us are adapting with Labguru to these challenging times. So, excuse me, for those of you who don't know what Labguru is, basically Labguru is a cloud-based application that allows you to run your research manager lab, orchestrate your operations in the cloud. We deal with lab logistics, data acquisition, data management, project management, and I'll show you a bit of how this is done. But at the core of our service is the Labguru ELN, Electronic Lab Notebook. So I will show you how companies are using Labguru to run their labs. So I'm going to talk about Labguru and the 4 C's, just to kind of give a framework for this session. And Elizabeth talked about the challenges. Obviously, COVID is the first C, COVID-19, and it poses a lot of changes. We can't travel as we used to. We are required to communicate differently. There are fewer people allowed in the lab, which poses implications on oversight. There are issues with procurement, how things are being done in the lab. And this basically requires us to adapt new tools and everything that is within our power to accommodate this. On the flip side of that, obviously, organizations are still required to meet their expectations, their goals, their targets. So the first C is COVID. This is what is imposed on us, and we all need to deal with this. The second C, which I think is pretty crucial for any organization to succeed in these times, is communications. And the first thing we've done back in March that when COVID started was introduce Labroom. This is a video chat you can see that is integrated in the screen. That is integrated directly into your Labguru account. It allows you and your peers that are now online to communicate directly in the same page and communicate. The difference between Labroom and Zoom or Google Meet is that it allows you to record your sessions and then it will simply save them within context. So from a regulation standpoint, if you have a discussion that needs capturing, and this makes it a lot more easier, and people are really happy about it. The second thing that we're seeing people are now adopting more are discussions. In each page in Labguru, whether this is an experimental page, a protocol page, any type of project, we have a discussion section, and that will allow the researchers to communicate directly on page, which keeps things in context, not over separated email threads. If you need something more detailed, for example, in this specific page, you can actually make comments on specific items within the page and have discussions that are associated. In this example, there is a researcher that has some issues with an instrument, and just asks his supervisor, and she tells him to move on, and it's fine. But these kinds of interactions are now harder to come by when you're not in the lab, and Labguru facilitates these discussions. The next C that I'm going to talk about is collaboration. There's a quote here, I'm not going to read it, from a PI in the University of Georgia, basically telling us how Labguru helps them organize their shifts and their calendars. So here's a short example. And the key thing is that when people are actually allowed to go back into the lab and run their experiments, they want to be sure that they have everything available at their disposal, that they have their instruments ready, that they have their samples at hand, that they don't run out of stocks. And Labguru helps them prepare and plan ahead and book time on their equipments and make sure that they can kind of have everything they need to succeed. But what happens when you can't go to the lab, right? So someone else needs to do some work for you, and there we see tasks becoming very, very important. I can ask a peer, and not just over the phone, hey, can you do me a favor? To replace a media or take a measurement. And these things are, again, captured within context, within your experimental work, so that they can then be reviewed and properly documented. We see also a lot of work being done with external collaborators, let it be CROs or other labs that you work with. Labguru allows you to manage and set which part of your account you can give access to external people, and you can define what they see and what they don't see, and what they can and what they cannot do. And this is becoming a very important feature right now. The last C that I'm going to talk about is commitment. I think that commitment is a big word. It has many aspects. Your commitment to your organization to make sure that your organization succeeds in these challenging times, but I'm going to focus about our commitment towards our users. We are here to make sure that we empower the users that have access to their data, even if they're not in the lab. And this is the most important thing I think we can stress out. We see a lot of good feedback that people are now seeing the benefit of working online, and that they can actually have much more flexibility over it. I thank you for your attention, and I will now pass the stage to Alex. And sorry.
All right. So hi, everyone. So far we've heard from Elizabeth at Seismic about helping you find the right people. And Jonathan talked about how to make sure you can have your lab working seamlessly. So I'm going to start telling you about how you can use Paper's literature management platform to streamline the way that your research teams are working with and accessing literature that's going to fuel those projects. And now, I'm sure we all can agree, right now, everything just feels harder than it did before. And it's not just the fact that our teams are continuing to adjust to remote working or a hybrid version of that. It's also the other C's and pressures that are currently wearing on all of us. And when we look to see how we can alleviate that pressure for our teams, one where we can look is eliminating busy work. How can we take something that currently takes 10 steps and reduce it down to 2? And so looking at how your teams are working with literature is really a great place to start. Because even before COVID happened, keeping up with the latest literature was an extremely manual affair. You have thousands of papers published every day. So that means your teams have been going through individually and coming up with their own special workflow for them to feel confident that they have eyes on all the papers that they need to. And then a little bit different than academia is navigating access is significantly more difficult, especially if you're with an early stage company where you don't have the same type of site subscriptions and things that you did either large organizations or when you were at uni. So paywalls become a real roadblock having to get through. And if you step back and look at an organization level, at an organization, you're now looking at everybody, all different workflows, collaborating in different ways, data scattered everywhere, people overlapping efforts because they're not aware of what other folks are doing. It's chaotic. But I mean, to be fair, your teams are all making it work. But right now, if you just stop and take a moment, sort of look at these workflows, making it work right now is just a lot of work. And so that's where Papers comes in. We've helped hundreds of research teams save time, eliminate duplicate efforts, and work more effectively with the literature that they need, all in a flexible workflow that they actually enjoy using, and at a price point that's a fit for teams of all shapes and sizes. So what makes us different than other tools out there? Well, it's not just that we bring in all the features that your teams need to work with literature in one place, from the discovery tools to full text access to enhanced PDF readers and citation writing capabilities in Word and Google Docs. What really sets us apart is our reader and researcher-centric workflow, how we get your team from one stage to another. And that is where your team is losing a lot of time, and that's where you'll immediately be able to see the difference with the Papers platform. And so I'd love to go down and tell you all the different features that we have and how wonderful they are, and I'd love to do so after today's session. But today I'm going to focus on three main areas. First, how we can make better use of what you have right now at a team and at a company level. How can we make access to the full text easier? And then third, how we can drive collaboration and make more of the way that your teams are working with literature together. So first things first, getting started is actually extremely simple. All it takes is that you look at, say, the data that you have, whether that be PDFs scattered in cloud drives, whether that's stuff on individual desktops, whether it's exports from a variety of different reference managers. You just drag and drop those into the app, and then we do a lot of that heavy lifting. We instantly identify everything we know about the paper: title, abstract, journals, citation counts, alt metrics. We even go and pull all the supplemental data automatically, so everything is beautifully bundled together and fully searchable. From there, we then go and look at the relationship between the papers that you have not only in your library, but also things that are outside of your library. So your team is sort of connected. And so that examples of that would be highlighting papers that are highly similar, flagging status changes such as like retractions, and then even going as far as to keep you posted on how other people are, the exact context, how other people are citing papers that you have in your library. So if you take a moment to think of that Dropbox drive that you might have as a team, all of a sudden, looking through this lens makes that data so much more useful. So next up is making people, so you've got everything organized, which is great. Next up is making it easy for them to build their library and get to into new papers. And as I mentioned, everybody's got their own workflow, and that's absolutely not something anybody wants to mess with in the middle of a pandemic, telling people they have to change what they're doing. And so our browser extensions that are part of our platform make that incredibly easy. So your team can do exactly what they do today, and as they go to whatever websites they start off on to looking for new papers, these buttons will automatically pop up. Instantly tell them what's already in their library, what's in a shared library, and bring those PDFs directly where they are in one click. If they don't have access to it, they then can easily import it directly into the library in a folder that they want to. And the full text is provided by us checking available open access options, us identifying, already knowing what your company's subscriptions are and navigating through the full text again in just a click for you. And then things that otherwise would lead you to a paywall, our document delivery service pops in, and we'd be able to deliver your users instant on-demand access, and then they would be able to get on with their research. And on the back end, we then go and provide centralized reporting back to your administrator so they can keep track with who's buying what, how much you're spending at a journal and at a publisher level. So the benefits here are clear. Your team's not downloading the same paper 4 times. Your subscriptions nobody has to think about how to get access through a subscription. It's already wired up. And also you're eliminating sort of the administrative costs of somebody having to not only the individual not having to go through those paywalls themselves, but also at the administrative side, somebody has to reconcile those charges that are coming on purchasing cards and expense reports. And so all of that is eliminated. And so all your team has to worry about is just finding the right papers and getting on with their day. And the third thing is around our collaborative shared spaces. So we have private shared spaces that can, with rules and configurations that are set by administrators, which will allow team members to create project folders where they can share and discuss papers in real time with everything name and timestamp so they can follow discussions. Papers can be easily imported through the browser extension directly, so discovery becomes sort of a team affair, if you will. And so, these papers now have context, way more so than a sort of 100 papers in a Dropbox drive would. And these shared collections also are piped into SmartCite, our citation tool. So that means if your team's working on a paper together, they can easily be working from the same reference list, to be working far more collaboratively as well. And the other dimension I think also to think of here when we're talking about hiring and bringing on new people is that, you know, these papers now have context. There is these discussions that are visible and captured from an organization level. So when you have new team members, they can be simply added and benefit from all that knowledge that's been circulating around from existing team members, instead of you sort of dropping or emailing them 50 papers that they should read to get caught up on a project. So it's really beneficial in just getting people onboarded onto new projects as they go. So these are just a few examples of how we've been helping research teams simplify the way they work with literature. And it's not just about, you know, it's about eliminating the busy work. It's also like freeing up that time so they can get on with their discoveries, and also saving them time and resources along the way. If you're like me, seeing is believing. So we'd be happy to set up a free trial for anyone interested to kick the wheels and see how papers actually would work for your team and see how much time we could actually save you. And so before we get into the Q&A, and just on behalf of Elizabeth, Jonathan, and myself, we do want to thank everybody for joining today's session. We hope that it was informative. And if you have any questions regarding any of our products or the discounts available for bundles and other and pricing, please do reach out. We'd love to share more about the specific features on the platform. And so from here, I'm going to pass the mic back to Elizabeth and to start getting through some of your questions.
Hi, everyone. Hi again. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Alex, for